Thanks, Josh. My mom still treats me like I'm 5 years old, and I grew a beard to try to confuse her, but it did not work. She got really concerned about me after the UCSB shooting happened. She got really nervous about that. She called the house at like 3 a.m. at night. She's like, "Jake, are you okay?" And I was like, "Mom, I don't go to school there." She's like, "Oh, okay." And then we just had a long talk about how much she loved me and everything. And then got to the end of the conversation. She's like, "Jake, promise me one thing. I don't care how mad you get. Don't ever do anything like that." I had to promise my mom over the phone that I wasn't going to shoot up a school. And then she didn't believe me, so I had to keep doing it. I was like, I'm not going to shoot up it's rude, first off. I don't think that's a nice thing to do. And then we just kept having a long argument. I'm like, I'm not going to shoot up a school! And then that kind of sounds like somebody who might shoot up a school. And I was like, hey, thanks for checking in. I really appreciate it. I would never shoot up a school, though. I'd only do the first part of a school shooting, which is kill your parents. I think that's the only part that's really relatable. That's the exact reaction that should be had to that joke, but I'm still disappointed you guys had it. Thought you guys would be on board. There's actually 7 more tags to that joke where I kill my parents, and I don't think I'm going to do them now, so I appreciate the feedback. I used to play sports when I was a kid, and I was not good. I was given 2 choices about which sports I could play. My parents were like, hey, you can play basketball or you can play basketball. And I was like, I'd like to be Willie Loman in Death of a Salesman. And they're like, here's your jersey. And I was like, okay, cool, neat. I remember showing up on the first day of Biddy basketball. That's what the YMCA called it. They didn't come up with a fake association name, just a very insulting name, Biddy basketball. Everybody had white T-shirts under their uniforms. I don't know why, if we were already afraid of our nipples at that point in life, or if our parents were ashamed of our bodies. That's what I really think happened. My parents like, his nipples are so puffy. They look like 2 ice cream scoops right next to each other. And they're also covered in hair. What's wrong with our child? We never should have had sex. That's what happened. I was not a good player. I remember our team would get the rebound and we'd dribble down to the other side of the court. I was not about that. I would sit down and wait for the other team to come back. I would not do that. I was like a sage veteran at 5. I was like, I get paid either way, right? Everybody's going to give me a Dunkaroos and a big pat on the back, and then they're going to say I played just as hard as the rest of you, and then I'd take a big drag of a smoke and then put it out on the court. If you walked into the middle of that game and you just saw a kid sitting down in the middle of the court, you'd be like, is that kid still protesting the national anthem? He is very excited about this. He went all the way through the song into the game. Good for him. He really hates the troops. Yeah. One thing I did not like about basketball, not enough flowers to pick on the court. That was my big problem with it. That's why I liked baseball, man. You could just sit out in right or left field. You could put your hat on your head. Then you could put your glove on top of that. You could sneak some grass, and then you could pretend like you got shot in the head. And then if you were really down for some fun, you'd try to figure out how to whistle with a piece of grass. The kids who could do that, those were the real players out there. I was not the worst baseball player, thank God. There were 2 guys. They were named the Stromer brothers. Very intense baseball players. Their favorite part of the game was handshakes at the end of the game. You do up the alley, down the street, who's the hardest team to beat? And then when they were giving handshakes, instead of handshakes, they would just cup everybody's balls down the whole line. Just everybody's ball. That's a very hard act out for me to do, by the way. I feel very uncomfortable when I do that. Just everybody's balls, all the way down the line. And I lived in a very liberal town, so nobody said anything. They were like, they could be gay, so we're just going to let this go. We're going to let them figure it out by the end of the season. And by the end of the season, what they started doing was touching their own balls, and then they would shake everybody's hands. So they really came a long way. They're both in jail now, so that's just so everybody feels comfortable walking home tonight. 2 things changed in sports, which made me hate sports. One, they started keeping score, and I started to become the kid with all the heart. That's what they said. You got so much heart out there. I'd be like, how many rebounds did I get? And they're like, we drew 3 hearts next to your name. That's a pretty good game. And I was like, yeah, but how many rebounds? They're like, oh my God, we drew 4 hearts next to you. I was like, all right, I forgot what my question was. And the other thing that changed is my dad started coaching, which if you like light child abuse, go see a father coach his own son in any sport he played collegiately. Just would yell at me constantly to a point where I would not shoot the ball at all in basketball. I could be right underneath the hoop, and I'd just fake it, and then I'd throw it out for a three. I just didn't want any extra attention. I remember one time I was playing defense, and a guy took his elbow and he just shoved it in my face, and I started bleeding from the mouth. And an old referee blew the whistle. He was like, that's how he sounds when he whistles. He was like, my mouth is dry. Whatever. Foul. And I was like, no, I don't think so. Because he's like, 2 shots. I was like, no, I was playing defense, so that's not a thing I want to do. And he's like, no, they're in the penalty. You get 2 shots. And I was like, yeah, no, I don't really want to do that. That's not something. No, did you foul me? And the guy's like, I didn't foul you. I was like, see, he didn't foul me. We don't have to do this. And I'm sure if he did foul me, it was probably an accident. So why don't we just call it an accident, not a foul, and we just move on? And the guy's like, no, you got to take the shots. And I was like, son of a bitch. So I walked up there, and I dribbled the ball twice, looked at the hoop, and I did the Jason Kidd kiss towards the hoop. That's the part of basketball I liked. I liked the theatrics of it. I remember one time I checked into a game and I immediately did Raise the Roof because I didn't know you actually had to do something in order to celebrate in the sports. I thought you could just do it anytime you kind of felt good. And that's usually the time I felt good, right before I started playing basketball. And so I shot it into the air, lofted it towards the hoop, and it landed about 3 feet short. And just had that sad dribble in the gym that you hear. Like a good dribble sounds great in the gym. A sad dribble just... And then all of a sudden I heard laughter out of the right side of my ear. And I turned over, and my dad was just huddled over, just laughing as hard as he's laughed in his entire life at anything I've ever done. He's also crying, which is the first time I've seen that. There's another kid rolling on the floor because he thinks it's the funniest thing he's ever seen in his life. And then the whole gym starts laughing at one child. And in the midst of all of this, my mom stands up in the crowd and she looks at my dad and she goes, Patrick, be quiet. That is your son. That is your son. That is your son. And then they throw me the ball for another free throw. And I line this one up, and I just throw it out of the gym because I'm not going to let people see a domestic dispute on my watch. And that's all it took for my mom to abandon me. She just sat down. She's like, well, that's enough for me. I don't need to be here. But my dad topped it off. He's like, that's not my son, Paula. That's your son. And then he did one of those. And then I ran out of the gym. And he didn't come look for me. He stayed to coach the rest of the game. I don't know if you guys remember the great La Sierra-Chino Hills rivalry of the 1990s, but you had to be there. All right, thank you so much, everybody. Give it up for John Parr and Tom Allen.